Hey friends, welcome back to Joe Daddy's Garage. As you know, almost all the videos on my channel deal with classic cars like this Mustang you see on the side, and I do a lot of repair work or fabrication work using a MIG welder. So many times these cars need a panel replaced and I weld new panels onto the car. So I have a lot of experience with MIG welders in general, but I've been offered the chance to try this X1 Pro from Xlaser. Now this is a different machine. You've probably seen videos on Instagram or different formats showing this type of machine, and I'm going to have to learn about it as I go. So I'm going to show you what's in the box, both of these boxes, and then we're going to see if we can't make some welds and demonstrate this machine. So what I'd like to do is set these boxes on the floor, pull out the contents, and set them on top of my welding table so you can see what's in the box. So right on top there is a sheet with the components that are inside the box. I'm not going to go over any of that, but I'm just going to show you this is inside. Pretty well packaged. So this is the feed or the power unit for the wire, like you're doing, like you have a MIG wire, right? So you can see it's got a carrier over here. This is where you put your spool on. That's how you lock on the spool. Down here is your input for the wire, and on the side here is an access. A little bit different than some of the other things that I've done where the piece would be hinged. This actually comes off, and you have two separate feed rollers. So we're going to look at that later on, but I'm just going to show you some of these. So you have the tensioner, which you can adjust. You have two of those, and I believe these allow you to do different wire thicknesses. So here's a roller, that's a 0.8 and 1.0, so we'll look into that a little bit later on. On the front here you have a wire feed and a wire retract, so you can adjust the wire before you get started. Here you have a spare roller, so there's a little bolt there to hold that. I'm assuming, because this one's loose, I'm assuming this one may end up down there, because I just pulled this straight out of the box. As you can see, I don't see a bolt. My assumption, oh, there it is, it's on the floor. On the side here you have a bolt that is holding another roller, and I'm going to assume, because when I opened this up this was already loose, this will end up here. So you have a little storage area down there. There's also a wiring connection here. This is a cover for that. Now in this package, here's a tube that's threaded on the end. We're going to find out where that goes. And then inside, there's a collar. A couple little wrenches. So it looks like there's 3 wrenches. So also in this bag there are 3 tips, and these are threaded on the inside, and so it looks like at least 2 different sizes, maybe 3. I'll set those aside. And this contains 2 items. One is a pin connector, so you've got a male and a female end on that. And this is your wire guide. So it's got a threaded end here, a threaded end here. They almost look the same, but they are different. This one has a a jam nut, and you can see it's got like a clear sleeve around the inner coil. So that's what's in that box. Now we're going to move on to the main box. I found another tip. It was loose in the bag. I should also point out these boxes have a seal on them. So when you cut this open, it cuts that seal. So if you get one of these, make sure this isn't damaged before you open it up. Inside this box we have the instruction manual. There's a lot of stuff going on in here. I'm not going to go over all that. We'll figure that out later on. There's also what appears to be, it says an inspection report, and it breaks it down as to what's in the box. Looks like there's at least two sheets. Okay, so quality control inspection and everything that's supposed to be in here. So handheld laser, welding gun, power cable, product manual, safety clip, all these things are in here. So you'll notice there's a foam insert here with a variety of things in it. There's a little cover here. I'm going to start just pulling this out. I may pull out the whole thing and set it up on the table. Next level is the gun. Oh, okay. Pause for a second. This is connected. So back here in this corner, there's a cutout. So be careful when you're lifting that, because this is connected directly to the machine. So I'm going to lift this out and set it up on the table. Let me tell you, that has some weight to it. That is not a lightweight machine. My understanding is this cable is a fiber optic. My understanding of that. So we're going to go over what's in this next. First thing, these are your safety goggles. So I'm not going to pull those out just yet. They're wrapped up. There's a secondary wrapping on the inside of that. I'll leave all that together. We've got some cleaning cloths. Looks like maybe a tether. So we're going to leave that all together. Two boxes on that side. And these are, it says focusing lens. Looks like GE243, GE243. I'm assuming it's the same numbers all the way through. It looks like everything matches. So you have two of those. Now this is a kill switch. And if I remember, it's magnetic. And that way, if you're working on something, this isn't falling off the table or get bumped or anything. It's going to hang on, so you have it within reach. You also have your grounding clamp and a plug-in. This has your pin connectors, and these have screws on the back side. I know I've seen other products, other tools that I've used has a thumb screw. This actually, you need a screwdriver to put that together. In this box you have a nozzle packing box of handheld laser welding heads. So these are the heads that go to the gun, I assume. So we'll look more at these a little bit later. with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It looks like there was an option for some more pieces or parts in there. I don't know. And it breaks it down as to what each one does here on the front, or what the model is. I'm going to set that aside. So here it looks like there's a sample of welds that can be done with this, and also some cutting that they've done. Interesting. So they're taking a piece of, looks like about 1/8 inch thick steel, done some segmented welds on it, and cut it with the laser. Interesting. Really nice looking welds. So here's a little box, and it has, oh, protective lens, it says. So these all say GE 229 material code, version number 41. And these are all look like the same thing. Yep, all have the same numbers on them. So there are 5 of those in this box. We have our power supply. Now you'll see this has a different type of connector on it. So I think this will run off of 110 or 220. However, I'm going to have to come up with something to make this fit, because I don't have anything that fits that connector. So that's going to pause this for a minute while I figure that out. There is the pin connector to the machine. So I'm going to have to do some research and figure that out. So without turning this on, just to show you what's on the front of this, there's a set of keys. So I think the implication is you're taking responsibility when you turn this on. You don't want somebody else around. You don't want it maybe to accidentally turn on. I don't know. But this key, you can secure it and walk away with it in your hand. Also, there's a kill switch. Emergency stop. It has a nice feel to it. Feels very well made. And down here at the bottom, it says loop, and that is for your ground to connect. Pretty simple. And this is your output for the gun. On the back of the machine, you can see there's 2 cooling fans. You have a power switch, and that is sealed up really nice with a flexible rubber cover. You have your AC 220 plug-in, which is going to be the threaded end of the main power cord, as I mentioned earlier. So below that you have the feeder, as it says here, and that is where this cable will connect that runs the wire feed unit. Down here you have your gas in. Now this is a slip connector, and I think it's, if I remember reading, it's like a 6mm. So I'm going to have to come up with a connector for that. Here you have a ground point, so it's got a screw that you can connect a ground to it. Here you have EX, I'm going to say control, and that is for your kill switch. So this needs to be attached. You run the screws in, and that connects this as your emergency kill switch. Now I'm not sure what the RS-232 is. I don't see a wire for that. If I find one, we'll connect it. So I want to make some connections here. As I talked about these fittings before, these electrical connections, and I want to point this out. This gas line here is a 6mm OD, and you'll need to get a hose to fit that. So 6mm OD, if I understand correctly, equals 4mm, or roughly 1/4 inch ID. At least that's my assumption at this point. So I do have a argon bottle. I had to get one of those, and I have a regulator ordered because it does not come with a regulator. Also, this outlet that I talked about, I realize now that I actually have this connection. This is the same outlet that I have for my air compressor plugged into the wall. It's the exact same configuration. So what I want to do is connect this 3-prong connector. Now this says feeder, and this says 220. So obviously it can only fit one way. It does have guides on the perimeter here, like little teeth. So look for those and how that lines up. It appears it goes about like that. There we go. I had to push it in just a little bit. So now I have a long cord. I'm not sure what the length is. I could probably measure that and see. And I'm going to connect the wire feed, even though I'm not ready for that because I don't have the gas. So I want to make sure everything is connected. This has the connections on one on each end, and one is a male and one is a female. So in looking at this one will go to this location. So again, it has those little teeth that only lines up one way. Slip that in, tighten that up. Then the other end will connect to the feeder. Now, I also have these other connections. This one is the kill switch, as we talked about previously, and I'm probably leave the wire twisted up on it for the moment. That's only going to fit one way. It's like a standard computer style connection. Insert that, and then use a screwdriver to tighten up those screws. Now I do see this ground here, and I may look at that a little harder. Typically when you have something like this, it is designed so you can put a loop on it and ground it, and maybe ground it to your table or something along those lines. If I get some more information on that as I look over the manual, we'll address that as well. I don't know that it's absolutely necessary, but we'll find out. So this is connected now, and as we mentioned before, this one goes to the front, and here we can see this okay. Come in a little bit. This is the other connection, and it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pins, and that will only fit one way as well. There's a slot here at the top, or I say the top, I don't know if it's the top. It's actually at the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to come straight through this opening here. I don't want to put a bind on it. Insert that. Okay, that gets us at least those connections taken care of. I want to leave this spooled up here. I don't want to mess with it. I'll take the plug-in away from the back of the machine, let's say. And I'm going to reposition this. Now, I did get some wire that I can put on this. We talked about previously. I noticed whenever I was messing around with this little later that this unthreads, and it has a tensioner in here, like it's a spring-loaded end. So I could push that in, and you can adjust this for this tension. My concern right now is this has a lot of resistance. Like, I don't know if that's normal or not, but normally you put your spool on, it goes on this pin, and I don't feel that this piece, it's just a roller, but it feels awfully stiff. So my concern is it supposed to be that stiff, or should it free roll? Because you have these feeder inlets on the front here, and I don't know for sure. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's the way this setup is designed. As I was showing earlier with this double roller here, maybe I'm looking at it, I think traditional MIG, typically when I look at stuff, when you have back-to-back roller wheels, maybe I'm looking at it wrong, as in the feed wire comes in, goes into this groove, looks like it goes straight across actually, and comes out of this one. So I'm assuming that both of these are driving at the same time, and maybe that's more of a precision type of thing, not having that freewheel motion that you typically have on like a MIG. So we'll figure that out when I get there. I want to show you this detail. This plug-in, the cable, power cord is I measured it. It's 16 feet. 16 feet. So I have plenty of wire to bring it all the way over here and plug it in to this outlet. There's always going to be some frustration. So this is the opposite. Like this will not work. If I put them side by side like this, they're in the opposite direction. So that's going to take something for me to figure out how I'm going to make this work. So let me show you where we're at right now. As I said before, there were some conflicts with the wire connector, and I ordered another connector, and I've already swapped it out, and really didn't have to do anything because it's exactly the same. It just changes the blades. In fact, this is the same end. I just took the centerpiece out and swapped it for that one. So now I can plug into my 220 outlet right there. Also, I have an argon bottle, and as I may have mentioned, this kit does not come with a regulator. And also the 6mm OD line does not come with it, so you're going to have to address that. The problem I ran into was finding a barb or end that would work, and I thought I had ordered one that would work, but this one is apparently 6mm OD. So the situation is I'm using a sleeve connector here on this 6mm line, and I have it plugged in right there. So that is connected. Now this regulator was just a cheap thing I found on Amazon, and they tell you in the instructions. So according to this, they suggest minimum pressure. The input gas pressure should be greater than 80 kPa and less than 500 kPa. So I'll have to try to make adjustments to make that happen. Hopefully this regulator will do what I need it to do. The other thing I looked at was, it talked about this ground, and it says that should be clamped to whatever you're working on. And I already talked about the kill switches and all that. So what I want to do is a test. The first thing I want to do is run the laser and try to clean some rust off of these two pieces. I put this piece of wood behind it because I don't want to damage my little welding table in case I slide off and don't hit what I want to do. Also, anything that you do, it said it requires wearing these goggles that come in the kit. So I'm going to try to get all this turned on and set up, and we'll see how well this works. So I'm going to turn it on the back. Comes up with the photonics screen, and then it gives you choices: welding, cutting, and cleaning. Now I will point out, on top here there are three things. It says alarm, ready, and laser. So when I initially turned this on, I had an alarm for something, and I realized that my regulator was not adjusted. And so when I was thinking about this, the kPa thing had me a little confused. So I did a little, I found a converter online, and basically 100 kPa is equivalent to about 14.5 psi. So whenever you're doing this, you may have to do a converter and see what your numbers need to be. So at this point, I'll say the laser is on. So you maybe see the red on my hand, and you have these choices here, and I do have my goggles on. You have welding, cutting, and cleaning. So I'm going to try out the cleaning one first. Now these parameters, you have your power setting, frequency, I'm not going to mess with that, duty cycle, and width. And my assumption would be that the width is how wide a pattern you're going to have. And then what I want to do here is I'm going to hit the gas button, And there it's you can hear the gas. You should be able to hear that. Yeah, I can feel it coming out. So I need to adjust it up a little. I see that my gauge has dropped, so I'm going to turn this up to about 14, and that's a good bit of gas movement. We can hear this going, and there was an alarm that said gas pressure, so that tells me to adjust it. So I'm going to turn the gas back off for a second, and I'm going to leave these parameters, and I guess you hit the set button. Let me see here: monitoring system, red light alignment, laser alarm, hardware, device details, and language. So I'm not going to mess with any of that. My plan is that I'm going to turn this on, turn the gas on, and see what happens when we try to clean this up some metal. I have the gas on, I have my goggles on. I'm going to hit this trigger and see what happens. Okay, I figured it out. You can't connect the ground to the piece. It actually wants you to ground to the gun. So when I do that, if you look right now, it's got these two lights here, and if I connect here, this blinks. Now it takes the light that was on the machine, it said connect, it turns that off. So I'm going to turn the gas on and try this again. Okay, so the gas is on. Okay, so I want to tell you, the gun has this like mode switch on it or something here. Process LED is number 7. Number 6 is status. And I was struggling with this. I was like, what do I need to do to make this thing work? So I ended up going in the machine, going over some stuff. Sort of helped, sort of didn't. And then I looked at this mode switch right here. And so, if you can see it clearly, this changes the modes. So item 1 would be, I believe, the welding. Item 2 would be cutting. And item 3 would be, or button 3 would be the cleaning. So now it should work. I have my goggles on. I have the ground clamp connected to the gun as it says, and I'm just going to try this. Now it turned off. So let me see what the warning says. Well, it had a red light for a second, and then the light went off. So let me try this again. It says laser source, and then automatic atmospheric pressure. So there must be something going on with the gas supply. I'm going to try it one more time and see what happens. I'll monitor my gas. Yeah, it drops down. It drops down. So it's a little tricky maybe to get this gas adjusted the way I want it. So I'm going to turn that up a little bit. Trial and error is what it's going to take. Back to the laser. So I left the trigger and it stops. Now, I see that it is cleaning this up. I can definitely smell that it's removing material. I'm going to turn up the power a little bit because I don't have it at 30%. So I'm going to put it at 40% and see what difference that makes. You can definitely smell, in the air, so you want to probably have some ventilation going. Let's try this again. I will say, even with these glasses on, that is very bright with the goggles in place. I feel some heat, nothing dramatic, but it definitely cleaned that one up. So what I want to do is I'm going to turn this up to 50%. So I'm going to try to angle myself away from it just slightly. That light is really bright. I may even consider putting another pair of goggles on just because I'm pretty light sensitive. So it definitely took off that rust. Interesting. Now, is it going to polish it up like it was? You know, you can see some shininess to this. No. Is it? Oh, that's barely. That's not even. That's not bad. Only took it a second, but you can see how much rust is on this thing. Interesting. Okay, I'm happy with that. I'm going to see what I can do as far as cutting something. So now what I want to do, you can see these parameters I had set. So let's go to mode selection, cutting, confirm. Vertical cutting is strictly prohibited. Angled cutting is permissible. Confirm. So there's power to 100%. I'm going to back that down just because I don't know. I don't want to go max. And I'm going to set this at 50%. And then here it has set. And this gives you parameters like monitoring the system. Shows you this interlock, e-stop, your PSI or your pressure on your gas. I'm sure these are, I don't know what those terms are, Temp 1, Temp 2, Temp 3, temperature laser, says it's 26 degrees Celsius. Laser source, focusing lens, gun trigger, connect, expire, and gun communication. So it looks like everything here, because I know this will turn on when I hit the trigger. So this is all green. Again, have that setting. So what I want to try to do is cut that piece of steel that I just cleaned. So I'm going to just leave this on monitoring system and then come back over here to this piece of steel. Now, I have not tried this obviously, and this is some thick stuff. That's some pretty thick metal. And I'll say this piece is still warm compared to this piece. So what I understand now is I need to change this mode. That would be welding, and that should be cutting, at least from what I'm gathering here. It doesn't tell you this in the instructions, and the instructions could be better. So let me see if I'm going to try it with the ground connected to the gun itself, and just see what happens. So I'm going to go at an angle. And that was nowhere near cutting through this piece of metal. And I'm going to put it at 100% because I just don't know what the limitations are on this stuff. So this is full power. So it's not going to touch metal that thick. Let me get some thinner stuff and we'll give that a shot. And all I want to do is see if it'll cut through this thinner metal. And again, I have this wood behind it. So we're going to find out. I'm going to angle this. Now, lots of smoke. There's a coating on this. And really all it did was get that hot. It did not cut through that piece of metal. And that's just a light piece of, that's a quarter panel skin off of a Mustang. So lots of smoke, lots of that. I'm going to turn this up to 50%. And I'm going to try to cut right next to that. And we'll see what transpires here. So trying to demonstrate this the best way I can. So here we are, 50%. Now, what's interesting is I've got a burn mark in the wood, but this is still solid. And near as I can tell, I mean, that if it's cut through, I don't see it. I don't know. That's weird. Look at that. You can see the wood burned. So how is that possible? Let's try that one more time. That's I don't get that. Okay, so there you can see it did burn through. And it burned the wood. So it may take some getting used to. So that created a lot of smoke and made this tip a little dirty. Never a good sign. So for my uses, like if I'm going to be working on a car, I'm probably not going to be using raw metal. I'll be using something like this that already has a coating on it. So maybe that's part of the problem. You wouldn't think a laser would have any issue with going through metal. You know, it's a light. It's a laser light. So I'm reviewing the parts and materials in this, and one of the things I'll point out, this tip that they have on here is probably not for the cutting. Now, I don't know what difference it would make. This has a pretty large opening, and if you look at their tin can here that they have, that says wire feeding, wire feeding, wire feeding, wire feeding, wire feeding, also wire feeding, outer angle welding. This one says double wire feeding. Okay, this one actually says cutting mode or cutting nozzle, and then over here it has one that says graded tube. The problem I have with this, so you have this packaging, you show 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 items. You open this up, and this is not what you see. You have one here, this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'm assuming this is the cutting nozzle. These other ones look more like the ones in the pictures. So you have this little tapered tip. You have this one which has the same kind of opening on the edge. So I'm going to assume this is the cutting nozzle. So I'm going to conduct the test again and try this other nozzle and see if that makes a difference. I don't know why it would or should or whatever, but if there's a difference between the size of this tip and this, maybe that'll help. So I'm going to put this in here, and you can see the laser light is still on, the like indicator light. Thread that on, and that is coming straight through that little hole. At least it appears that way. So I'm going to try it again and see what happens. Set to number 2 on the gun. So I'm going to try it right next to that one. Now that made a difference. I would not have expected that. But that must be why they have a different tip. And of course it blasted right through into the wood. So now I know. You can see that thin little separation there. So now what I'll do is I'm going to try that now on this thick piece. See what happens. So at 65%, I'll go right next to that. So it appears that got closer. It did make better penetration through that. So I'm going to turn that up. We're going to go to 100% and see what happens. That actually penetrated into that. So with a little practice, I can probably make a really good cut. This is hot, but not too hot. So right now, I will say it'll cut through this. It'll cut through, that's, a good 1/8 inch or so. But it's going to take a little bit of time. I need to slow down and make sure it's burning through. I know it cut through most of it, but unlike a plasma cutter, it's hard to see. Well, that's hot now. Woohoo! It's hard to see because it's such a thin cutter. Yeah, that's got some heat on it. That's scary. Oh, gosh. Okay, so there it is. I was able to cut through that. So we've tried the cleaning and the cutting, and I was surprised. It took a little figuring out to get the cutting to do what I wanted, but it will cut. Now it's not typical of like a plasma cutter. It is something different, and it did work. However, I want to try the welding. So I'm going to click on that, hit confirm. Now this may be a little bit different because right now this says wire feed, and I don't plan to try the wire feed. I'm going to do it without that. It has the connect button is lit right there, a little red indicator. So I'm assuming you either have to have that connected to the gun, which I will try that, or you would have to connect it to the metal that you're welding. I don't know why you would need to do that, but I'm going to try it. I'll try it and see what I can figure out. So I'm going to do an outside corner weld, and I'm going to back this down to 45%. Now the thickness or the width of the metal, this is in millimeter, and you can't change that. So I'm going to have to do some measuring, and I'll tell you what the size is and then the adjustment that I make for that. So I have measured the piece of metal that I'm going to use. It's some of that quarter panel sheet metal, and what I found is it's 0.045, and so the conversion of that says 1.143 millimeter. So I'm going to back this down. I'm going to go with, let's see, 1.14. I'm going to go with 1.2. I don't want to go any less than that. And I'm going to try to do an outside corner weld, and we'll see how that goes. So this is the same sheet metal that I was cutting up, and you can see how thick it is right there. And I did use a caliper to measure that. So now I have these two pieces together, creating like a little roof on a birdhouse or something. And I changed over to this tip. Now, this one, according to the picture on the tin, says no wire feeding, outer angle welding. I feel like that's what I'm doing. So I'm going to turn all this on, and right now, like it has a red indicator light, I'm going to clamp this back onto the gun, and the light turned green. So that should be okay. I also want to check my settings. And as I said before, it's got a 1, 2, 3. There's the 1. Put on your laser goggles. So in the imagery that we've seen, and I'll point this out too, I don't know if I'm assuming there's an adjustment here. This is threaded all the way in, and it's not flat with the gun. I'm assuming you can change some of these parameters to make that fit flat, and I don't know that it needs to be tight for sure, but as it is, I'm going to leave it the way it is and angle the gun slightly to compensate. The gas is on, and we'll find out. Or not. Let me see what the parameters say. It says it's something not right. So I had to hit the little the power switch. That's still not doing what I think it's supposed to do. Okay, now the light went off. So I clamped it to the metal, and the light went off. Let's see what happens. All right, that didn't do anything. So I'm at 40%. Light's blinking again. We'll find out if this is going to do what I want. Okay, so it appears that it is basically putting power to one edge. See if I can reconfigure this a little bit. Maybe doing a little bit. It's a learning curve. I'm going to up the power to 50 Okay, so I'm going to angle this. Now I can see the lasers on both pieces. Alright, I've got penetration at these points. This started looking really good. I may have to try to tie these two in together. And, you know, trying to angle this and make sure the laser hits on both pieces is a little tricky. And at this point I probably have not enough material to make it do what I want. However, there's no doubt that it has connected these two. Doesn't look too bad. And you know, this is again part of the learning curve. If you're doing this something like this, you may want to have a tighter angle. As I look at it on the inside, you can see the penetration, and that's bonded. I mean, that's connected. I don't need to bend the metal to show you, but I can feel it and I can see the penetration. Yeah, oh, there it went. So this section here is nice and tight, and this upper section, which I just barely even made good contact with, is not welded, but I can tell the rest of it is definitely welded together. That's actually pretty good. I must say that's a good weld. I don't even need to smash that to let you know that. You know, you could take a hammer and flatten that out. That's a pretty good weld. Yeah. If you're doing sheet metal work on a car, that would hold up just fine. So we're going to set up the wire feed. We talked about this before. You got these double rollers and these tensioners right here. So when you look at these rollers, this has a number on it, 1.0. That's not talking about this side. That's talking about this side. See how thick that is? 1.0. This one says 0.8. So it's referring to when you see it, that's the side that's on the inside. So I'm going to have this roller put it in with the 1.0, which I believe should be the 30 thousandths wire, which is what I've been using lately. So put that in, and then these two other rollers, this says 1.2 volt, I guess, or 1.6 V, or what I'm assuming it means volt. You can see how thick those are. And again, 1.2, this is narrower, 1.6, this is wider. So we'll set those aside. The wire feeder, the two ends on it, you've got one that is pretty much set. Like there's nothing more you can do here. And the other one, which has a jam nut on it, will go on the gun side. So what I want to do is push this in here, and then it's got a screw here that you would tighten up and put tension on that. That's the way I see it. So I'll tighten that up, and then I'll get some wire on here, and we'll run it into the gun, or under the gun, and see how that works. Now I just want to verify something before I put this all the way on, that fits that groove, and it does. It seems to fit nicely in that first groove, which is the 1.0, but I'll verify to make sure. I'll check my wire size dimensions. So this will feed in. It may take a little effort because I have to get it to go through both of the rollers. So I'm going to turn the machine on just to feed the wire. There's wire feed. That's pretty slow. Pretty slow. Now there may be a way to speed that up. I'll have to figure that out. So let me look at this. So I did change it to 50, I guess, millimeters per second. So that's feeding. I don't know if I can change that much higher. I tried to change it to like 80. It won't take that. So I'll go to 60. Won't take that. So it looks like 50 is the max speed. So I'm going to let that feed through and get to the gun and work on that end. So I have the wire sticking out of the tip here, and basically there's only one place to go with this, and you have to take the jam nut off. And I believe there's probably some configuration you can do, like, you know, you can set the length of this. That's why they have these two nuts on here. Now, I'm going to play with this a little. When I look at this, I can see that this will move like this, but it needs to go forward. It's too far to the rear. So I may have to loosen this up right here a little bit. I don't see, there's no Allen wrench. I don't believe this is meant to have, maybe it's meant to have an extender on it. Like this. That would make sense, wouldn't it? There we go. It's got a threaded end on it. Which doesn't, oh, that's where you hold the tips. I figured it out. One step at a time. Okay, so if we put that in there, that will make this length longer. And that makes more sense now. So I'll thread these, the washer and the jam nut on there. And then you can angle this, change this length. Now it's making more sense. So these tips, that says 1.6, and that may be what I need here. I'm going to feed some more wire out so I can see where it shows up. So there's some wire. That tip fits. Put that on there. Actually, let me back up a step. Unless this goes over, yeah. Back up a step. Put this collar on, because that's going to put tension on this. This has a split body on it, and that would tighten that up so that this tube can't move around. Put that back on. Now I know I'm not going to use this tip. So there's a bunch of adjustment here. You can adjust this length here, or you can adjust it with this sleeve, this jam here. So let me figure out what tip I want to use. Metal tin. and it may end up wire feeding 0.8, 1.0, 1.2 millimeter, and I don't know. Oh, AS112, and that, or 12, AS12. So that's the number of the tip, the first one that was in there when I opened up the gun. So I'll put that back on. It actually looks like it lines up pretty good. And then I'll have to figure out this, like the length where it needs to be. And I don't want to force anything. So this piece is now all the way back against this inner section, so I want to slide this back. And for now, I'll leave it like that. I want to just see where this kind of plays out. It's a learning curve, as I said before. You got to figure out how these pieces need to interact, what's best, and go from there. So there we have an initial setup. Put these other pieces back away. I think I'll just put these other tips in the tin so they're out of the way. I might even put the wrenches in there. I don't know if that's what they intended, but there we go. Okay, I have it set on number 1 on the gun, and I just put the clamp on the gun itself. I have the wire feed set at 10 millimeters a second and 20% power. The swing width is 3 millimeters, and if I have it set correctly, the thickness I put at 4 millimeters. So I back the wire up just a hair. Have not tried this. We're going to find out. Just a second. So all I want to do is I want to lay a bead, see what happens. And something's not right. So we clamp it on this maybe. Nope. Alright, I hit the power button on the screen. It needed to be, let me see if that works. Okay, so that's not where I want it to be. And just see if this makes sense. So there's the wire. Alright. Interesting. Very interesting. So with that, I mean, it's a tall bead, but the parameters are hard to guesstimate. Like, I'll try it at a higher power. We'll go with 65. See if that doesn't change anything. I'm going to bring the wire in just a little. We'll try that again. You go right next to that. I'm getting used to pulling this away a little sooner. That's not bad. It's not bad at all. I'm going to do it one more time, and I'm going to turn it up a little higher. See what it does. Okay, we are now at 75%. Pretty similar. Pretty similar. Not bad. I'm going to set up and try something different here in just a second. Okay, this is some of that same sheet metal. And I set the parameter at 1 millimeter thick because the choices are pretty limited. It goes 1 to 2, I believe, is what the next one was. So I kept it at 1, and then I set the swing width to 1.6 millimeter, meaning how far it's supposed to go back and forth. I'm at 45% power, and I'm going to see, hopefully, how well this will weld this together. So let's find out. No, that's not what I had in mind. Okay, that's feeding way too fast. It appears if the wire deflects at all out of your path of the laser, that you're going to lose that burn. So, and this may take some tweaking. I mean, it's not something I'm, obviously used to doing. Okay. Took a couple tries. Wow. Got penetration. That's not too bad. Compared to starting up here and having it bump and push and do different things, that's not too bad. It's hot, but you can see the penetration. Well, you watched me struggle with trying to make everything work the way that I assumed it would. I'll point this out once again. I have been using a MIG welder primarily for at least 35 or 40 years. I've done a little stick welding besides that, and that's where my background is. I've done all kinds of welding before, but this is a new experience. I didn't know what to expect from this. I've seen other videos and it says you can do this and do that, and I've proven in my period of time that I've worked with this tool that it does what it says it'll do. Whether it's cleaning off rust from a surface, it did that as it says it would. I showed that with 2 different pieces of material, and it worked. I also demonstrated using the laser as a cutter. Now I will say this, I am familiar with a plasma cutter or a torch. I've never used anything like this before, and as I pointed out, it works, but it's also hazardous. If I'm doing something with a car where I'm cutting out a floor pan or something like that, my go-to will be the plasma cutter, simply because it only cuts that much. When that plasma arc is created, it's only cutting through a ½ inch or whatever, and that's it. There is nothing else after that. When you have something like this, it is actually burning through the metal, and as I demonstrated, in this case burning some wood to make some cuts through this metal. So for my purposes, I won't be using it to do any work on a car with the laser. Also, I demonstrated welding together these two pieces of metal, and I'll point out it worked. As I said, this is not coming apart. I have no doubt. The situation is it has to be a nice clean gap. If you're welding with just the laser light, you have to have material touching each other and enough there that it's going to melt together. If you're trying to do it like I was doing it, where it may have had a gap, it won't do it. It's going to leave a gap. So keep that in mind if you're looking to use the laser for that purpose. Then I demonstrated doing some welds. And I welded on this thick metal, and that was the first time that I have tried to weld with this, and it's a learning curve. You know, when you're adjusting the wire to come out and meet the laser where it needs to be, and there's a lot of adjustments that can be made. And I may not have done them all, but I did enough that I was able to make 3 welds, and it was a live demonstration. There was no run up to that. This is all first-hand test. And the first weld was a bit bumpy, the second one smoothed out, and the third one looked really nice. So I'm very happy with that. Now, I also did a brief weld on some sheet metal, and it did the job. It actually, I'm very happy with that. It turned out nice. Now, I think for me, odds are this will only be used a certain amount of times on different types of projects. I know I can use it on a car. I can do welding, plug welds and stuff like that. I know I can do that with this thing. I don't have any doubt. But I also know that I'm more comfortable with the MIG welder. So this, to me, is ideal for a craft welder. Somebody who is building items that they're gonna sell, like using stainless steel, maybe building some sort of 3D object and cutting metal and putting it together and having really nice welds. I think it's fantastic for that. I also think it's fantastic if you're going to be doing CNC cutting. This is set up for that. You can attach it into the CNC machine and it'll do exactly what you want it to do. And also, as it demonstrated, I've seen in other videos, you can weld underwater with this. Now, I'm not going to demonstrate that. I've done pretty much all I can do. There's also the issue of, you know, you have these glasses and they work fine. They do what they're supposed to do. But the other issue is learning how to use the manual. There is always an interface, like there's a language situation or maybe different uses of words. As example, when I used the argon bottle, it measured out in kPa, I think it was, instead of PSI. This measures in millimeter, where I'm used to a standard measurement in inches or thousandths or whatever. So there's a lot of information in this manual, and it would take me a while to learn how to use this 100%. There is a learning curve, but I do like the machine. I will say that. I like the way they have built this thing. It feels super solid. It has safety features that most machines don't have. This independent feeder, I actually kind of like it because you can control the feed back and forth, make adjustments on, you know, if you need to for setting it up. Typical MIG, you can't do that. You either cut off the wire or you have to do something else. This, you can tweak it. These rollers, the roller wheel, all of that is solid. I mean, this thing feels like a little tank. It is a tough feeling machine. I like the connectors in the back. I like this kill switch that you can put it somewhere and it's magnetic and you can use it in an emergency to shut the thing off. I actually kind of like the key because this is a laser. This is a 700 watt laser. So I showed, just in moving it around, I created little scars on this metal because again, it's a learning curve. And so you may end up having an issue. If this thing were to stay on, you'd be wanting to shut it off. I don't want to run the risk of having anybody else around when I was using this, and I know it's a dangerous machine. It is a real machine. So while I may not be using it every day, there is a chance that I will be using it for a variety of things, from cleaning rust to maybe some special welding jobs that I come up with later on. So I do like the machine, but it is a learning curve. Keep that in mind when you're looking at this machine. So that'll be it for this video. I thank you for watching. There will be links to this company and in the description box down below. So if you're interested, you can follow those links and look up this machine. I believe they're going to be having a sale coming up very soon, and there may be discounts available, so you can check that out. So that'll be it for this video. I want to thank you for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves. See ya.